everybody, welcome to another video. Hope you're ready to flex those brain muscles. In this video, I'm going to quickly talk about arc length of a circle. So this topic students usually don't have too hard of a time with. It's one of those topics you first learn when you're first learning about trigonometry. So I'll just quickly touch on it. Arc length of a circle. So first of all, what is an arc? Well, it's the length around the edge of a circle, but it's not all the way around because that would just be what? That would be the circumference. So it's just a fraction, a piece or segment, however you want to think of it. It's a fraction of the circumference. And how much of the circumference? Well, that depends on our central angle, theta, okay? So whatever this angle is, that tells you how much of the circumference of the circle your arc length is, okay? So this formula you can memorize probably pretty easily. S equals R times theta. That's not too bad, where S is arc length, R is radius, theta is your central angle in radians. It's not too bad, but it's pretty simple to see where this comes from. It actually comes from the circumference. So circumference is what? Circumference equals 2 pi r. Well, we don't want the full circumference. We want a piece. We want a fraction of the circumference. And again, that depends on theta. How much of the circumference we need depends on theta. So if we multiply this, let's think about this. Theta, if our theta is radians, then we have theta over what? Well, the total possible amount we can rotate is one full rotation, right? That's the most we can rotate to get the circumference. So out of a total of possible 2 pi radians, we're rotating theta, okay? So when I simplify this, I get 2 pi, those cancel, and I'm left with r theta, and that's where this formula comes from. And if you're still a little bit confused on how this works, well, let's try an example. Find the length of the arc of a circle of radius 4 subtended by the angle pi, okay? Subtended just means formed. It's like a fancy word, just formed by the angle pi. So our theta is pi, our radius is 4. You could just plug those in and probably do that in your head and get the answer. But what do we expect this to be? Think about it. We have the angle pi. Pi is what? That's half a rotation around, right? If you think of your unit circle, we have pi over 2, and then we have pi here. So since we're going halfway around and we're taking that length of that arc, we're basically taking half the circumference, okay? So think about, what is half the circumference? Well, circumference is 2 pi r. So if we divide that by 2, we're left with just pi r, right? 2 pi r, that's the circumference. If we divide the circumference by 2, we're left with pi r. And since our angle is pi, we're taking half the circumference. So we expect this to be our answer, and it actually is, right? Look what happens when I plug in 4 for the radius. I get 4 pi. And look what happens when I plug in for my formula as well. I get 4 times my angle pi. So you can convince yourself why this works. Hopefully this makes a little more sense. And think about if I do the same thing with pi over 2. We'd expect that to be a quarter of the circumference, okay? And I could just plug straight into my formula. 4 times pi over 2. That is what? 4 over 2. That just simplifies to be 2 pi. 4 times pi over 2 simplifies to be 2 pi. And think about it. Pi over 2, that's a quarter of the circumference. So we expect it to be half as much as half the circumference, right? And double this would be the full circumference of a circle with radius 4, which makes sense because we plug that in, we get 2 pi r, that comes out to 8 pi. So all this stuff is adding up. Hopefully this is helping you understand. So if you ever do blank on this formula on the exam, you can kind of think your way through this. I'm always a big fan of, instead of just memorizing formulas, trying to at least understand a little bit how the formulas work, how they're derived. You know, still memorize them if you want, but that way you have something to fall back on. You have a deeper understanding. So since we have 3 variables here, we have arc length, radius, and a central angle. Usually you're given 2 of these, okay? So in these cases, we were given radius and central angle for both of these, okay? Radius and central angle, we found arc length, but you could be given arc length and radius and asked to find central angle. You could be given any of these 2. If you have any of these 2, you can find the third. So we'll see a couple more examples real quick. All right, so let's see just a couple examples. We're gonna solve for whatever unknown we have. So in this case, we're given radius, we're given arc length, we're solving for theta, okay? So I'm just gonna plug into my formula. I have 3 equals 5 theta. Now I solve for theta by dividing both sides by 5. Pretty straightforward. Divide both sides by 5, and I have theta equals 3 over 5, and this is radians, right? 3 over 5 radians. Maybe your instructor doesn't make you write out radians, but just be aware that this is in radians. Just because it doesn't have pi in it doesn't mean it's not radians. This is roughly, if I had to guess, around 35 degrees, right? But yeah, this is our answer. This is legit. So that's the only real issue I see with these problems. They're usually pretty straightforward. The only issue is when we get something like this and a student tries to plug in 90 for theta. Theta is in radians, so we have to convert this first, right? So I have 90. How can I convert this to radians from degrees? Do you remember? 90 times pi over 180, okay? Multiply by pi over 180. So I get 90 over 180, that's 1 over 2. So this actually equals pi over 2. So that's my theta. I have my arc length. So what do I set up? I set up this formula. 4 pi centimeters equals r, that's what we're solving for. Theta, that's pi over 2. Now I'm solving for r. And another thing to note is that since a unit is given here, centimeters, our radius is going to be in centimeters as well. These units always line up, okay? So depending on how picky your instructor is, maybe that doesn't matter to you, but something worth being aware of. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 2 over pi because that's going to get the r by itself. 2 over pi, that's going to get the r by itself because pi over 2 times 2 over pi is 1, so I'm left with r. And r equals what? 2 over pi times 4 pi. That's just 8 pi over pi. That is 8. And I have 8 what? Centimeters. Alright, not too bad, right? Hopefully this video helped. If it did, make sure to hit like, hit subscribe, visit my channel for more videos, leave any questions below, and keep flexing those brain muscles. I'll see you in the next video.